just under the surface. If we start looking for them, it is interesting. But anyway, but the thing is, so this book, which was okay, it was fiction, but it was more real than real. And this is coming back to Joffre, because in fact, what I was doing was creating a meta-realist book, and it's in fact I called it a meta-realist allegory. And what was amazing was that people started contacting me and saying, "My goodness, this book, it reminds me. I know that I have lived in Zandonatis. I can remember life there. In the book, it describes things exactly as I've seen them in my dreams. And then this is when I started thinking, well, maybe I've tapped into something. Maybe Zandonatis really did exist. Maybe not in this dimension, but maybe in a parallel world."
Well, maybe when you were writing it, maybe you lived it.
Yeah. I did. I certainly lived it.
Oh, yeah.
But I lived it even more when I started putting together the stories and all this ancillary material. Some of it, when I think about it, some of it was a bit over the top, really. But it did seem to work. One of the events in the book, with this parallel material, was a set of confessions from a certain Martha Calbro, who remembered being in Zandonatis, and it was called Martha Calbro's Dreaming Diary. And she kind of did a regression at the trailer that you talked about, the 6 minute trailer, has an excerpt from that where she sees the Earth going round and in the wrong way. So it's going back in time, and it speeds up and it speeds up and it speeds up, and she keeps hovering over Antarctica, and she actually sees, in reverse motion, she sees Antarctica moving away from its current position at the pole and becoming a continent with trees and rivers and mountains and of course Zandonatis in the middle of it. And she revisits this city. But it's a kind of self-regression, and so this is there as well as one of the parallel tales that goes with the main event, the main story. And so so we had these people getting in touch and saying, "Yeah, I remember that I lived in Zandonatis. This is evoking stuff for me. This is an awakening for me. Now I know what it's all about." This was pretty heavy stuff, and I continued to maintain the myth or the ambiguity of this being real. And honestly, this is the first time I've actually, shall we say, in public, have come out and said, well, as far as I know, it is fiction. I'm not trying to, pretend that it isn't. However, it would seem that empirical evidence from those who've read it, perhaps it really did exist or does exist on another dimension.
Or something very similar to it. Don't forget Antarctica one time, was a nice, sunny, warm continent with trees and, flowers and animals and wildlife at one point. Oh yes.
And one of the aspects of this story is quite interesting. I mean, the people of Zandonatis were, as I said, they were a crossbreed between the Eraumen, which is a winged race. Say angels, but who were obviously extraterrestrials. And they mated with the Feblings, the people, the native people, to create the people of Zanzibar. So they were their children. But these angels, the Arauman, they lived more or less eternally. But they went around in flying chariots. Now, these flying chariots were drawn by what are basically Pegasus horses with wings. And to fly, they needed to be able to sing. That was the rhythm that made sure, the rhythm of their song kept the wings beating to the right rhythm. And towards the end of the book, there is a massive battle when the forces of evil are attacking the city, and the Erelmen come in their chariots to save it. But the forces of evil, which are in fact the Feblings, who have been taken over by some rather nasty creatures, including snakes and crows and some really devilish beasts with like enormous bats that shriek. And the technique these forces used was that the crows, the garrows, who emit these awful grating sounds, they were trying to put off the chanting of the Valians, that's to say these Pegasus creatures. And so there's an aspect to the book which is extremely, what shall we say, audio. It almost has an audio track to it, because you can imagine these graceful creatures flying through the air chanting their song, and these black crows and terrible Valian bats were wheeling around them, screeching and howling, and trying to put the horses, or the Pegasus type horses, off their song, and in this way bring the chariots down. So you can imagine that. I mean, that would make a great scene, wouldn't it, in a movie?
Well, it sure would. I mean, you'd have, the Pegasus, and, pulling the, it'd be, crashing, and, it wouldn't be very exciting to see. I'll tell you that. It'd be kind of horrid to see. And
yeah. But they do, of course, needless to say, they do manage to get out of it by just climbing and getting higher. But anyway, so all of this was churning around. This was in the original book, done in 1974-75, and but to all of that, there's all this, as I say, ancillary material around it that makes it look, makes it seem real. I mean, for example, there are six screenshots from a forum of sort of laid-back people who are discussing this, of people who've supposedly read the book or heard about the book, and they're saying, hey, this idea of you remembering all your previous lives, and by accepting the idea of reincarnation, he said, hey, just think about it. He said, the death penalty, that means that the death penalty is too good for some people. And they were sort of pointing out what it must really mean. If everybody can remember all their past lives, what it would be like. And they're talking about it in quite a glib way, there were some people who really thought it was a real site. And there was another site that was a Catholic, Orthodox, very, very, very strict Catholic site, who were pouring sort of hell and damnation upon the whole idea, saying this was an abomination and heresy, and you should go nowhere near it because you'll get contaminated. So that was another thing tacked on to the story. So it's a patchwork, and there are people that get through it pretty quick, actually. And I think the record. Somebody told me that they read the whole 772 pages in 4 days.
Well, then that meant they probably didn't watch any TV. They didn't go to work. They probably didn't even eat. They were probably sitting in their bed or where I would be, and just reading it. Because I'll tell you, I mean, with that many pages, you're talking 772 pages. I mean, hey Gordon, I have a hard time reading a book over 168 pages, and that is a weekend read for me. So I mean, I got a feeling, once somebody starts reading this book, they just get so engrossed and become part of the story.
Yeah, well, and there's another option, and as I said, the trailer, the 6-minute trailer, is the trailer for the audiobook. And actually working on the audiobook was almost, well, I don't know, it was probably more engrossing than writing the book itself, because I was very fortunate enough, by sheer chance, it just happened that living up the road from us are two of the Royal Shakespeare Company's absolute top actors who are now retired. And Bill Homewood, who has been on masses of TV shows, he's also a kind of audiobook. What shall I say? I don't know. He's a star anyway in audiobooks. He's recorded things like Les Miserables. He mainly does classics. He's done, so he did Les Miserables, which was only 65 hours of recording time.
Only 65. Wow. But,
65 hours.
Yeah, but I'm going to say, Gordon, though, I was so engrossed in watching what you had me look at. I mean, it sounded like I was watching something from Shakespeare. I mean, the grammar was so perfect. I mean, it just brought you into it. I mean, you couldn't have done better.
He's got this fruity voice. I mean, he could read, as I've often said to them, so it's Bill and Estelle. As I've often said to them, they could read the phone directory, and you wouldn't be able to stop listening to them.
Or read what's on when you go buy a package of food. What you could read the ingredients, and you go, "Oh, I want that."
Yeah. And anyway, they I asked them if they would be prepared to do this. And they're normally, these people are real pros. I mean, apart from being both of them in the Royal Shakespeare Company, and Estelle Kuller is her name. She at the time was considered to be she was the greatest Juliet of her time.
Oh wow!
And she has actually played all of Shakespeare's heroines, so and she's got this. You hear her on that trailer. She's got this wonderful sort of really quite sexy voice. And anyway, and Bill, so Bill has recorded so many of the great classics. He's done everything. He's done everything from Shakespeare to all the great classics you can think of, and he's probably recorded them. So anyway, so they agreed to do it, and it's so. I mean, obviously they had to be paid for this because it actually took them 3 weeks to record it. But it so happened that I had some money. I had some sort of spare money. We sold we sold an apartment, and I was able to pay them decently. And anyway, so the recording took over 3 weeks, and so Bill was reading all the story, the main story of Gorin, the guy who woke up without knowing who he was and who went to Xandanatis and the battle, all of this, and the poetry, and he wrote, and he's able to do several voices, and I think he did. I think